Welcome to Mastering Innovation Together with Kevin Mobley of Ian Thomas Group and Chris Koomey of Thorben Consulting. Kevin, your career has been dedicated to software performance engineering. Things have changed over years. Where do you see the challenges going forward with software performance?
Well, everybody will say complexity. That's the first thing people will say, and they're absolutely right. I say complexity, but I also say dependency. I just think that as we integrate software and technology into things that mean life or death, or just flat out dependency. I'll give you a small story. We were working with a bank one time, and they were working on their remote deposit capture, which is basically your ability to take a check and deposit it on your phone as at home versus going into a branch. So the use case for it was pretty straightforward, and that's the way they were thinking about it. Well, users do what users do. And so once people got the ability to deposit a check, they didn't limit themselves to sitting at home at a dining room table depositing a check. They were depositing checks at, sitting at a stoplight, on there with the check sitting on their knee. They were doing deposits in places that you just wouldn't expect. Well, when that didn't work, the unintended consequences were significant. So first of all, the system was failing about one out of three times, and they didn't know it because they weren't really monitoring the user experience. They were monitoring the database. The data center performance. And so they really had no idea that one out of three times it was failing. Well, from a user perspective, think about it. You're at a stoplight, you go to deposit a check, it fails. It's first time really using the system, or you haven't used the system that often. You immediately declare the system is non-functional and doesn't perform. You drive over to a branch, you deposit a check, and you let everybody in the branch know that the system sucks and you're never going to use it again. And so what the business is trying to do is they're trying to move people out of the branch into the phone. Well, you've now just become more committed to the branch than you were before. And so you're not going back to that software. And so that mobile application becomes less important to you, which then disrupts the entire business case, the hundreds of millions of dollars that's being spent by the business to move people out of the physical branches onto the mobile application. And so as we think about that dependency factor, and when it doesn't perform, when it doesn't live up to the hype, we both waste money, we extend the timeline in which technology is truly adapted. And then, frankly, once we get everybody rolled onto the systems and they really are dependent on it and it doesn't perform, then we have other problems, which is that we have life or death issues. We have, just huge customer disruption issues. And so that's what I see as that dependency factor becoming more and more serious, and our ability to plan ahead of time and think about how systems are going to get used, and frankly, admit that we may not always know how they're going to be used, but we have the ability to monitor in real time how the systems are being used and use that feedback loop to constantly make changes and adjustments. That to me is getting way, way more complex. The amount of data that we're collecting is unimaginable, and being able to pinpoint exactly what data matters and ignore all the stuff that doesn't matter, those are really seriously challenging problems.
Yeah, and performance used to be kind of the technical data center. How fast did it serve up? And now, as you're indicating, it's really getting into the user experience. That's where the performance is, and people do things that nobody really expected, and you have to plan for that. So,
yep. Yeah, and that's good. This really gets right to the heart of the business. When the business itself is allocating resources, in the old days, they'd simply send the IT department a bucket of money and say, go build us something, and then hope that things kind of work themselves through. In these days, it's really the business itself that's basing, hey, here's how we're going to run our organization over the next 2 to 3 years. And this is how technology is going to play a role in that. And so it's incumbent upon the business to understand how their technology and their user experience better than anyone. And that means data. That means collecting lots and lots of real-time data. That means analyzing real-time data. That means understanding that real-time data, and then holding their technology partners accountable for delivering what they've asked for.
So how does Ian Thomas Group help your clients with those challenges?
So as you can tell, we're over the years, of course, I've been in the guts of the system, plenty of systems over the years, and I've just learned that you've got, if you can't take a step back and look at the problem holistically, you'll be for firefighting forever. So at this point in my career, I'm less interested in the firefighting and much more interested in the holistic problems. So I try to work with the business side to help them think about technology and what they're doing and their responsibilities and how they're leveraging their resources best and then work our way down into the technical side of things.
Because really it's more strategic now. Architecture has kind of become the central point,
Mhm.
whereas it used to be they did architecture, but it really was about the software.
Yep.
And systems have really matured into that, where the architecture is really what's guiding performance, usability, and data capture. And how do you make data your most valuable asset and really embrace it?
Yep. Absolutely.
So what are the things that you see going forward beyond that complexity? How can you make things less complex? How do you help people simplify it?
I'll tell you, Chris, is as much as I want to give you a technical answer, I will say that the business's ability to both understand both performance and cyber, and I say at the board level, at the C-suite level, and at the business line level, the more that they're actually directly involved and accountable, the more likely organizations are going to be successful. The more this is handed off, whether it's to an outside third-party consulting organization or handed off to their internal IT organization, and the business is allowed to sort of sit back, I think these problems don't go away anytime soon. I mean, the kinds of stuff that we're talking about are not going to get solved. And so that's, to me, if you had asked me, and to be totally honest with you, I think that the improvement of the technical aptitude at the board, C-suite, and the business line level is really the most important thing any organizations can be thinking about.
Yeah, and cybersecurity used to be kind of a peripheral, check the box, make sure we had these things covered. But with ransomware and privacy and people stealing data, that's at the core of a lot of businesses, is making sure that they're preventing that from happening. So
it is the business. And, again, the businesses, I mean, whether you're running trains or whether you're, doing retail, technology is simply how you get business done. And if your board and if your C-suite is sort of, not really up to speed on what's going on, and they're not able to ask the right kind of questions, they're not able to hold people accountable, then you're going to have the kind of mess that we still see in the news today.
So are you working with boards to help them understand better? Or is that the next thing on your to-do list?
The next thing on my to-do list, to
Yeah.
be frank. I'll tell you a funny but sad story. So we were in one of those board, they have these umbrella groups that are responsible for folks that are interested in board service come. And so we were sitting in one of those meetings with the folks from, one of the credit agencies that got severely hammered, Equifax. I mean, everybody knows what happened. And they were doing a postmortem on what they learned and whatnot. And so after they did their postmortem on everything, and these are folks that either currently serve on Fortune 500 boards or are trying to earn board service, I did an informal survey of the room to get a sense of, whether or not the folks on the board, what were they thinking they were going to do next. And I'll tell you, the most depressing answer I heard over and over and over was, well, we expect the CIO or the CISO to take care of that. And and I was like, that was one of the single biggest takeaways from the Equifax postmortem, is that not enough people with, P&L responsibilities even understood what their risk and exposure was. And so here you have folks that have just heard all that, but because they're still not thinking of themselves as being responsible, they're looking to outsource it. They weren't, there was no call to action for them personally. And that was pretty depressing.
And that's part of maturing and educating the new range of leaders, because I think those who've bypassed it are ones that have gotten in trouble. So our son went to college, and the first day of finals week, the college got ransomwared, and so all of their materials were online, all of their exams were online, and so they basically were held hostage and had to basically give everyone a passing grade.
Yep.
And
There was the candy company that makes the candy corns got ransomware right before Halloween a couple of years ago.
okay.
And it's a funny story because people say, "Oh, everybody hates candy corns," right? Well, not everybody hates candy corns, but more importantly, this is the most profitable time for their business. And obviously the hackers knew that. And they went after them when they were most vulnerable, when they were most likely to pay, when they were most likely to throw their hands up. And they're really relatively unsophisticated business when you think about technology. Who thinks about technology and candy corns? But at the end of the day, obviously technology played an important part in their operations because they were simply unable to deliver. They're candy corns. So whether your business is doing something, putting satellites in the sky, or doing something as simple as putting candy on the table, technology today is, and in the future, is going to play an incredibly pivotal role. And for the executives and the board members and the line of business owners not to be the ones held accountable for that, especially when it comes to cyber, it's just not acceptable going forward. So shareholders need to be asking those questions. Looking at how sophisticated from a technology standpoint are those who are in charge.
Yeah, it's no longer a peripheral issue. It's central to their core business. So Kevin Mobley, thanks so much for helping us master innovation together today.
Thank you.
Thank you for mastering innovation together today with Thorben Consulting. This is Chris Koomey. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy the show, if you have any comments, questions, or just want to learn more about what we do. Thanks for joining us.